Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, Adriana. My name is Adriana. I am so glad you could join me today. So today's video I will be talking about voting rights and how they were changed in the past and how the past affects the current. So yeah, if you want to learn more about voting rights, stay tuned. On February 3rd, 1870, the 15th Amendment was ratified into the United States Constitution. The first section of the 15th Amendment states, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude." Side note, if social media existed back in the 1870s, I could imagine the hype reactions and memes on Black Twitter regarding the amendment's passage. And of course, we also know that the reactions on some, let's say, less melanated populaces of Twitter would have been in shambles. We know this because as soon as the 15th Amendment was passed, many southern states, aka the Confederacy, quickly went to work on how to keep Black folks from voting without making it too obvious. You know, doing racist things while screaming at the top of their lungs about how not racist they are because they don't care if you're black, white, green, purple, or striped. For example, let's look at my home state, Georgia. Land of peaches, amazing sports teams, Outcasts, Coca-Cola, Martin Luther King, and Jim Crow voting laws. According to the Georgia Historical Society, on August 21st, 1907, after Reconstruction ended and the South was once again left to its own devices, Governor Hoke Smith signed an act that would amend Georgia's constitution and impose a literacy test as a requirement for voting. Well, how is a literacy test racist? Doesn't it simply require one to read? Can't Black people read? I'm so glad you asked, Steve. See, because many plantation owners didn't allow enslaved people to read, naturally, a vast majority of the Black population in Georgia was illiterate. Problem for Hoke Smith was that a lot of white people couldn't read either. So, to get around this, Smith added in a few exemptions that would allow white illiterate people to vote while still allowing voter suppression of Black people. One notable exemption said that any Union or Confederate veteran or their descendants could vote. This exemption became known as the Grandfather Clause. Georgia's Confederate Army stood at almost 100,000 during the Civil War. So clearly this provision exempted hundreds of thousands of white people from the literacy test. Now granted, Black soldiers also served on the Confederate side of the Civil War, but we should all know by now that America has not kept the same energy when it comes to Black and white veterans. See the GI Bill. Another hindrance to voting for Black people was the poll tax. Poll taxes back then were set at about $1 to $2. That may not seem like a lot, but a quick Google search will tell you that $1 in 1900 is approximately worth $31.31. Now, imagine paying $62 every time you went to vote. That is a lot of money. Now, these laws, taxes, and other voter suppression tactics remained in place until 1965, when after much activism from civil rights leaders, the people, and after 3 civil rights voting bills failed to stop voter suppression, Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Notably, Section 3B of the Voting Rights Act states the following. If in a proceeding instituted by the Attorney General under any statute to enforce the guarantees of the 15th Amendment in any state or political subdivision, the court finds that a test or device has been used for the purpose or with the effect of denying or abridging the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color, it shall suspend the use of tests and devices in such state or political subdivisions as the court shall determine it's appropriate and for such period as it deemed necessary. So in short, that means that the federal government peeped all of those poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses and said,
"Not on my watch." Not today.
So after the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed, black people signed up to vote in droves, and racist white people everywhere had meltdowns. The sky was rainbows, bunnies hopped around lawns, babies smiled, and a bunch of angels got wings. Ah, if only. Since its passage, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 has been amended, changed, and recertified several times throughout the years. Some of the changes have been good. For example, one amendment expanded voting protections to language minorities, such as people of Indigenous, Asian, and Hispanic heritage. And of course, some of the changes have been terrible, like when Section 4B and Section 5 of the Act was stricken down by the Supreme Court in 2013 in the landmark case Shelby County versus Holder.
As Chief Justice John Roberts said, nearly 50 years later, things have changed dramatically. At issue was a provision in the act that singled out states with a history of discrimination in voting, mostly in the South, and required them to get pre-clearance, approval from the federal government before changing voting procedures. In its 5-4 decision, the court said Shelby County had a point, and the justices turned the spotlight squarely on Congress, saying it was wrong to use a decades-old formula to keep the same states under federal oversight.
In her dissent, late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg notably pointed out that the reason why voting discrimination had decreased was mainly due to the existence of the Voting Rights Act. She wrote that throwing out preclearance when it has worked and is continuing to work to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. And she was right. Since this ruling, several states have gone ham in the past 8 years, creating all sorts of voting laws meant to suppress the votes of minorities. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 sought to prevent laws that were created for the purpose or with the effect of denying or abridging the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. Meaning that a bill doesn't have to be labeled House Bill 531. I'm mad Stacey Abrams mobilized all of these black people and other minorities to elect a black senator, a Jewish senator, and turn Georgia blue. So I gotta make up all this S to stop the blacks at all. Even though I ain't found a single case of vote fraud yet. If the bill has the effect of voter suppression on black people and other minorities, it is racist. Let's look at two new bill proposals from Georgia. House Bill 531 and Senate Bill 241.
There are a number of other exciting and interesting provisions in this bill that will get a lot of discussion here at the Capitol over the next few hours, probably. It tightens, it requires voters requesting absentee ballots to produce ID information not previously required, limits the number of absentee ballot drop boxes in each county, requires drop boxes to be kept indoors and only during business hours of the places where the drop boxes are being kept indoors, and it ends absentee balloting and ends early voting 11 days prior to Election Day, which essentially creates sort of an early voting blackout period in the week or so, or the week or more immediately prior to a November election or a June primary. A couple of other provisions that I've read here just in the last few minutes as I've been pounding through this 66-page bill. It includes a provision that disallows the distribution of food and drink to lines of people who are set up looking for looking to vote in either primaries or elections. Senate Bill 241 restricts absentee ballots only to those who are 65 or older, or who may be required to work on Election Day, or who will be out of town or observing a religious holiday.
All of these proposed changes to Georgia's election law disproportionately affect black voters and voters of color. According to a study conducted by the Center for New Data, black people are more likely to vote on the weekend compared to white people. Voting lines in predominantly black areas tend to be longer than those in white areas. So making it a misdemeanor to hand out food and water to voters affects black people the most. But perhaps the most egregious proposal within the two bills is the elimination of no excuse absentee voting. A provision, mind you, that Republicans made into law. In 2005, Republicans in Georgia made a provision for absentee voting. Everything was all good for years until 2020, where all of a sudden, there's voter fraud. Yet, top Republican officials in the state swear that the 2020 election had no widespread voter fraud.
So you've seen no evidence, nothing has been presented to your office to support these very serious accusations from the Georgia Senate candidates and from the state GOP chair?
We do have ongoing investigations, multiple investigations, but it doesn't rise to the level of 14,000. At the end of the day, we don't see a widespread voter fraud, but we will investigate every case we hear. We want to make sure we root out any illegal voting. It's very important to us that everyone needs to know that their vote matters. But likewise, we believe that integrity matters, and we believe that before a businessman or business people put out notices, they should be able to support that with facts.
Yeah.
I would in my business.
So, if Republican officials are so adamant that the election was secure, why the push for new laws? Why say that the laws they themselves enacted are effective? And if your purpose for enacting these laws are not because of race, then why not change them when you see that the effect of the laws are unequal because of race? Could it be that the goal is simply to shore up Republican minority rule throughout the country? Which brings me all the way back to the 15th Amendment. Section 2 of the amendment states that the Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So what we now need in America is a new Voting Rights Act. Luckily, one of my senators, Senator Raphael Warnock, advocates for the passage of the For the People Act. The For the People Act seeks to expand voting access by eliminating ID requirements, allowing same-day voter registration, and requires states to set up automatic voter registrations for eligible voters in federal elections. By renewing federal oversight over states and their insane voter suppression tactics, I'm optimistic that elections in the future can be both fair and free. So call your representatives and senators and urge for the passage of the For the People Act. Help support voting rights groups like Black Voters Matter and Fair Fight by donating time and money. By mobilizing and working together, I know that we can make change in this country. All right, y'all, so that's all I have to say on voting rights, at least in this video. Thank you so much for watching videos. I hope to do more videos on politics in the future. If you like this video, hit the like button. Also share it with your family and friends and help convince people that we need a Voting Rights Act. And also, if you want to subscribe to my channel, I'll be back again with more videos. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.